Hey YouTube friends, it's time for me to paint the body of the Tamiya Tech GTO 1 chassis, the Ferrari GTO body. So I wanted to give you, to show you what the beginning stage looks like, or what the body shell looks like before I do anything to it. There are plastic parts that come with this kit. I will be revealing them to you in future segments. So it's a very nice mold. I mean, this is actually part of the kit building process that I enjoy the most, but also the part that I dread the most. I like it because, you know, the results can be pretty spectacular. I dread it because it's a lot of work, and you know, bad things can happen if I screw up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to proceed step by step, and I'm going to show you exactly what I do, one segment at a time, so you have a good idea of how to paint a Lexan body such as this, and you can apply the same techniques to pretty much any Lexan body, not just the GTO that I have in front of me. So stay tuned. All right, so I should have added this, you know, but the first thing that needs to be done is to basically cut the shell from its base. And if you see very carefully, you know, there's lines that demarcate where the body begins and where the base begins. And it's really simple process. I mean, what you do is, well, what I do is I basically take a very sharp hobby knife and I score along these lines right here. I mean, I don't need to cut through it. I just need to score. You know, give it a nice scoring. It doesn't have to be too super deep, and then slowly break off the pieces. All right. I mean, it sounds pretty brutal and drastic, but that's what you really need to do. I mean, that's all it requires, is to just score it, and it will break cleanly, and then you can break off the rest. All right, and then I will show you how to cut the wheel wells out, because I do that after I cut the body from the base, because there's a technique I use to cut the wheel wells that will guarantee me perfect wheel wells each and every single time. So stay tuned. All right, so I have cut out the body from the base, and obviously there's a lot of cleaning that needs to be done. I mean, this is just an initial part. I haven't sanded or anything like that, but you'll see that you know, it's actually pretty easy to manage once you cut it out. And then the next thing I do after I cut it out is I cut out the wheel wells, and I do this by using this. This is like a compass, and it's got a blade at the end of it. And what I do is I use it to score the wheel well, and then use that, and then cut out the circle, or break off the circle after it's been scored. So using this technique, you know, the wheel wells are circular, and they come out, you know, perfectly circular. So stay tuned for my next step. All right, so here's what is what's going on right now. I had cut out the wheel wells. As you can see, they're very circular, and I've started to sand down the rough edges of the wheel wells, and also the bottom of the body, to make it more clean. And the way I do it, which worked best for me, is I just basically take, you know, 100 grit sandpaper, wrap it around, you know, a tube, and kind of like you know, just sand away. And I also use a sanding stick. It's not really that hard. You don't have to do a super good job or a super fine job of just making sure that the rough edges are off, and that's all that's required. Because once you start painting it, and you take the protective mask off, you know, you really don't see anything. I wouldn't try to make it as smooth as if you were painting a hard body, because that's completely unnecessary. In fact, like I said, I only use 100 grit to sand it and to straighten out the lines and to make sure that there are no rough edges along the bottom and also along the wheel well. And that's pretty much it. In this instance, I want to show you too that the Ferrari GTO it has air intakes on the side. I decided to cut these out even though I didn't need to, for a couple reasons. One is that it might provide some extra airflow going to the motor and the ESC, which is in the back. And also I think it looks better than having a black sticker there. So let's see if my theory holds up. So anyway, stay tuned. Alright, so the next thing I did was I washed the body with dishwashing detergent and a sponge. Really, that's all it is. It's like washing dishes. You just take the sponge and you wipe the inside of it, wet the inside of it, and rinse it off and make sure that all the soap residue is gone. The reason why you do this is two reasons actually. One is because, you know, when you're doing the sanding previously, it leaves a lot of dust, and that prevents the paint from adhering and looks really bad. And the second reason is because there's usually oils in the on the body itself as part of the molding process, and you want to rinse that off because you want to have the paint have a clean surface to adhere to, because with Lexan it takes a lot of punishment and abuse, you know, driving, you know, being on an RC chassis, so the paint will flake off if you don't make sure that the interior or the surface that it's going to be painted on is not completely clean. You don't need to worry about the outside, because the outside is actually is covered by a thin plastic sheeting which will be removed, so it's not important. What's more important as you paint is that you clean the inside as much as possible. So the next step is I'm going to be applying these window masks, and luckily for me is that these seem to be pre-cut, so I don't need to be cutting them out. I don't really have any magic or any strategy or technique that I use to apply the window masks. I don't know any. I just do the best I can to make sure that it attaches cleanly and that it matches the window frames so that it looks as nice as possible. That's all I can do. If you have any ideas, then I'll be happy to hear about it, but I don't. All right, so stay tuned. All right, so I have applied the window masking on this Lexan body. I also plugged the hole that I had cut out for the side air intake. You don't want to, because the paint, when you spray it from the inside, it will shoot outside, and you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that there's no paint that comes out from any different holes. This kit does come with bucket lights, and so you can have LED lighting, which I'm going to do. So I mask up the lights as well, so that you can see lights through them. There's front and back. And so the next step I'm going to do, and this one is different than what I have done in the past, is I'm going to start marking up the body panel lines, the door lines, because I want to try this technique and see how it works out. So stay tuned. Hey YouTube friends, I wanted to share with you what I'm doing with the Ferrari GTO. Here's the deal, is that there's a lot of black trim around the car, around the window, and in various parts. So what I did was I masked inside the parts that I'm going to be painting black. All right, and so you know, these areas right here are going to be painted black along the window, and along the side there's a long black not pinstripe but trim, and then the rest of it's going to be masked. And so that's my plan. All right, stay tuned. And by the way, I understand that's a lot of masking to do, but you know, I think it's worth it because it looks a lot better than a sticker. It actually complements the sticker, and you know, if you want your vehicle, your model to look as good as possible, you want to take the extra mile to do so. And so that's what I'm doing, hopefully with good results. Stay tuned. Alright, so I've begun painting, and so I am making this video to point out a couple things to you that might help you. One is the masking. One of the techniques I use, you know, you see in this area, I use masking tape, and I only use one brand, the Tamiya masking tape, because I find it to be the best in terms of adhesion and also peeling off. It won't peel off paint, especially, you know, this is really critical in Lexan bodies because the paint is actually, the particles are very, very small and they peel off easier than other types of paint. So you want to use a good masking tape. You don't want to be using like blue painter's tape from 3M, for instance, because it's way too adhesive. It actually will tear off patches of paint once you start removing it. So Tamiya masking tape, and then also, you know, in areas where I won't be painting, but doesn't, you know, like here, I don't need to do some fine masking. So what I do is I just use saran wrap, okay, you know, because there's not a lot of areas here that require any fine masking. So that's one point I want to make. And second point is I painted the first coat of black already. Okay, and the reason why you want to, you know, black is the darkest color that I'll be painting on this body, and you almost always want to paint the darkest color first, because if you paint light colors first, then what will happen is that the darker colors subsequent to them will show through. And remember that when you're painting Lexan, you're actually painting in reverse, because you're painting from the inside as opposed to outside. Okay, so so that's really important. Is the darkest color goes first for Lexan, you know, painting. And then so you also see my first coat of paint, which is critical, and that's one of the things that I'm gonna remind you of, is that your first coat of paint should look like this. I mean, it's barely even there, and it's just like a mist, really. And the reason why is that you want to give the paint an opportunity to kind of bind with the plastic, and also with the masking tape. What this does is that it creates a little small layer of protection, so that in future coats it's not going to bleed. Okay, this technique will help the paint from bleeding, and because if you layer on a bunch of paint at this point, what will happen is that it's gonna soak through the masking, and you're gonna get globs of bleeding, which you want to avoid as much as possible. I mean, you know, you still will get bleeding a little bit, but it will be lessened if your coats are really, really light like this. Okay, like almost barely there. It's like a mist almost, and it's really important that the first layer should be this way. So and it's not a big deal, because, you know, with Lexan paint, it dries really quick. In fact, I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a hair dryer and blow on it, and to make it dry faster, so you can literally paint coats 15 minutes or 10 minutes apart from each other, because it dries so fast, and you can help the drying process by using hair dryer. So anyway, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. All right, so I have applied a couple layers, about 3.5 layers of black paint, and so you can see that with just even light coats, it really filled out, so you don't have to worry about not looking good. So the next step is I'm gonna start to peel off this, areas that are masked, so I can start painting the main body, making sure that I don't peel off the windows or the light masking, because they stay on till the very end. And another point, something I want to point out is when you paint, make sure that you hold the body at different angles. Like for instance, you'll shoot a spray at this angle, and then one at this angle, and one at this angle, and one at this angle, so that the spray gets an opportunity to cover as much area as possible. Because if you only paint in one direction, then what you'll find is that there's going to be areas that are going to be blocked off or not going to be painted. So make sure you switch the angles around a little bit. So, all right, so I'm going to now peel off the paint, and I'll show you what it looks like so far. Stay tuned. All right, so I have removed all the masking from for the black painting, and so you should see something like this. The window trim, is black, and the rest of the car is, still clear. And you want to make sure that the window masking is still on very tight. And what I've done is I pressed them back on to make sure that they haven't lifted off. And at this time, what I would do is I would inspect the body to see if there has to find out if to look for paint that has blown into places where I don't want it to be. And I found one. It's right here. I don't know how this got here, but I'm assuming that a part of the masking lifted off, and so it found its way to the body. So now I'm gonna take a cotton swab and some rubbing alcohol and rub this area and rub this paint off before it cures. And also, if you see areas, and I don't see it in this body right now, but if you see areas where there are globs of bleeding, you can take a hobby knife and scrape it off, and straighten the line out. And oftentimes the subsequent layers of paint will hide that. So that's another technique you can use to, hide blemishes or improve your painting. Is there's paint bleeding. Like for instance, if this is a paint bleed area, I would just take a hobby knife and kind of scrape it off, and allow the subsequent layers, body color to come through. So anyway, I'm going to start painting the body now, and I'll show you what it looks like very soon. Stay tuned. All right, so I have sprayed my first coat of the second color, which is red. There's only going to be two colors in this paint scheme, red and black. And so same technique as before, a light mist to kind of cover the body and let it dry. And also you note that the black areas that I've already painted, I don't need to remask them because I can just paint over them, and the red won't show through. Like here, I just painted right over them, so you don't really have to go back and remask this area. And that's the benefit of painting Lexan, is that because you're painting in reverse, you can just, the areas that have already been painted, you can just not worry about them, and you don't have to worry about them showing through. So this area here that had a black part, I did manage to scrape it off with rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip. So I was pretty happy with that. And so right now, I just need to apply maybe 2 or 3 more coats of paint and pretty much this body is done. So stay tuned. All right, so I have applied about three and a half, 4 layers of red to the body, and this is what you should look like. It should look like. You see that it's pretty well covered, and it blends in nicely with the black. The windows are still masked, obviously. You know, the thing with polycarbonate or Lexan paint is it's slightly translucent. And, you know, if you hold it up to the light, you'll see that it's a little bit translucent, all right? And the way that you can tell that you've painted the body well enough is that when you hold it up to the light, that there's no bright spots, okay? There's no spots where the light shows through more than other places. Like here, it's pretty, like the body so far, it's pretty consistent and uniform. And so that's when I've determined that there's enough paint on the body. And because the paint is translucent, I'm gonna have to apply a backer, what we call a backer coat. And what that is it's another layer of paint in a different color, usually silver or white or black, so that it completely covers the car or makes the car not translucent, okay? And so that's what's going to happen next. I'm going to because this is a bright color, a red color, and I want to keep it bright red, I'm going to apply a silver back coating so that it will maintain its color. If I apply a black back coating right now to this paint, it will darken the red and it will become, the black will show through and the car will have a dark red color, which is, you know, effect that you may have, but I don't want in this situation, I want that effect. I don't want that effect. I want it to be bright red as it is now. So I'm going to apply a silver back color. And by the way, if you're wondering what paint I'm using Tamiya PS5, you know, PS standing for polycarbonate Lexan paint, which is black. PS5, which is black, and then this is just PS2, which is red. All right, there are other types of other brands of polycarbonate paint. I just happen to use Tamiya because I'm used to it, and you know, and I trust it because it works well. There may, you know, your mileage may vary with other paints, you know, but this is what I use for the most part when I paint polycarbonate colors. I might venture off to other different, you know, brands, but so far I've been satisfied with them. And so, and make sure again that you are using polycarbonate paint. All right, specifically because if you use other types of paints, it's gonna flake off. I guarantee you. You know, the only you can only use paints that are formulated specifically for polycarbonate or Lexan or RC car paints. All right, because their particles are very fine and they tend to stay. They will stay onto the body. But if you use any other type of plastic paint, like the TS paint or acrylic or whatever, after one use or after one driving session, you're gonna start seeing flakes all over the place. And trust me, I've tried it. I'm speaking from personal experience. So anyway, next step again is the silver backing color, and stay tuned. All right, so I have applied about 2 or 3 layers of silver backing to the Lexan, and you know, you can see right away that it's not as translucent as it was before. It has the body color has a you know, looks solid, and it is also at the same time maintains its bright red color. All right, so that is the purpose of the silver backing, and that's why it's necessary for you to do that. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna be driving around with a car that is see-through. All right. So the next step, is I'm going to apply another layer of backing, which is black, and I'll explain why. Stay tuned. Thanks. All right, so this next step that I just completed is purely optional. I do it for aesthetic reasons, and I'll explain what I mean by that. After I gave it a back coating of silver, I then gave it a back coating of black. And the reason why I do that is because I want the interior of the car to be black. When you look inside the car, or the wheel wells, so to right here like this, it looks better, in my opinion, for it to be black as opposed to silver. And that's really the only reason why I do it. It's not to have the extra coat of bit of protection, or to give it more depth, but just aesthetic reasons. So it's purely optional. And you notice that I put the black backing after the silver backing is because, like I said, if I had put the black backing right away after I finished painting the red, then it would darken the red color, and you don't want that to happen. But with silver backing in, it doesn't really darken anymore. It just keeps, and you can see it, just a tad bit, maybe a micro shade darker, but nothing really noticeable. So the last step is that I'm going to remove the masking for the lights in the back and paint them clear red, because I'm going to install some LED lighting, and you need the backlight to be red, obviously. All right, stay tuned. All right, so we're at near the very end. What I did was I took the masking off of the lights in the rear and gave it about 2 or 3 coats of clear red, so that it simulates the rear light. That's pretty much it. And when I'm done with that, then the painting for this body is complete. So now the only thing we got to do is take off the masking and see the results. Now what I usually do is I just take a hobby knife and I kind of go on the edge, just kind of lift up the edge here. Any edge will do. I mean, I didn't choose this one for any particular purpose. And kind of slowly peel it off. Try not to, there's about, 6-7 coats of paint on this already, so it could be very sticky, and it could pull off some of the paint. And so you don't want to do that. You just want to peel it slowly so that it comes off evenly. All right. Okay, I like what I'm doing now. So there you go. Here's the front window. Not too bad. There's a little bit of bleeding, but nothing that can't be easily cleaned up. So hopefully our luck will hold. And I should mention that you want to do this a little bit as soon as possible after the paint is dry. You don't want to wait too long, because you don't want the paint to harden before you start pulling off the masking, because what will happen if the paint has hardened, and here the paint is still a little bit soft, so it's flexible and you can pull it off. But if it gets hard, then it'll flake off, or it'll start pulling off a whole bunch of paint off with the masking, and you don't want that to happen. And that's one side. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Okay, this side didn't turn out as nice, but you know that's why we have stickers. So the stickers will help mask the defects or the blemishes in the painting process. My philosophy is I try not to rely on one or the other. I mean, I don't try to. It's hard to get a perfect paint job, so I try not to rely on that. And it's hard. It's also hard not to apply the stickers to be able to apply the stickers perfectly. So I try not to rely on that either. So you know, one will support each other if you do it right. And then there's also some the masking. You can see already that there's a lot more bleeding in the headlights than I would have liked. I think it's because I didn't press down on it hard enough, so some paint leaked through, but that's that. Okay, so that's the headlights, and the last thing to do is to take off the clear protective coat on the outside. This is the best part of the painting process because this is when the magic happens. So you can see that it's ultra glossy when you take off the protective plastic coating off of the front, and it looks like a premium paint job. Alright, so there you have it. This is the Ferrari GTO, freshly painted, unmasked, and there are probably some areas, like I can see right here, that I don't know why it wasn't painted. I think it's because of tape. So there you have it. So the only thing I need to do now is put the stickers on and then put the plastic trim, and then we have a complete GTO body. If you had been following along and with each step, then your shell should look exactly like this one at this point. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Alright, so this is going to be the last video in the series for painting this body. As you can see, it's I applied the stickers, and I think that overall the body came out very good. I'm pleased with them. I know that there are mistakes I made, and I'm not going to fix them. But overall, it's a pretty good effort. And I want to point out a couple of things to you. The front fascia here that you see, that's the bumper. That is a plastic piece that is screwed onto the body. The side mirrors are plastic pieces that is mounted on with a clip, and then the rear bumper is also a plastic piece that is screwed on. So there are plastic pieces that come with this kit. I would say that this is probably one of the best looking Lexan body kits that Tamiya has made that I've worked with, and I've probably painted maybe about 10 Tamiya kits. This is my favorite one so far because of the level of detail, the quality, the proportions, the ease of painting, the decals, the quality of the decals, just a lot of different things. I mean, I wish they would make this body kit in 1/10 scale, or 190 millimeter scale, you know, that for their standard touring car kit. Because if they did, I don't know how many they would sell, so many of these kits, because it just looks so good. I mean, but it just looks so nice. So anyway, I don't really have a lot of advice on how to apply decals because I'm not an expert. I do my best. I really haven't figured out any techniques that make them better than anybody else's. But the only thing I would say is that you should use tweezers, okay, when you're applying the decals and handling them, you know, and when you are placing them. Don't use your fingers because your fingers have oil on them, and if you get it on the adhesive of the decals, you ruin them, and they don't really stick as firmly as they could. So do your best to handle them. I mean, there are going to be situations where you are going to get your fingerprints on it. I mean, in this situation, if you look at the body closely, you will find my fingerprints on it. So I shouldn't be lecturing, but just do your best. And also, use something like this. Like Tamiya makes decal scissors to cut them out. In this situation, the decals have already been pre-cut, so I didn't really need them. But if they're not, then I would recommend that you use something like this, because they're so small, you can get around circles and corners really easily, or use a hobby knife to cut them and to lift them off of the back of the paper. Just another comment is, you can see that this one of the reasons why I spent a lot of time on the masking and trimming the windows is because there is, I like it to be where you have a hard time seeing where the paint begins and where the decals end, and in like in this situation. So I think if it was just paint alone, or if decals alone, it wouldn't look as nice. But when you combine them together, you get a much more realistic and pleasing appearance, and that is why I spend the little bit of extra time to mask all the windows and the trim, so that they come out as good as possible. So anyway, that is it for this paint tutorial. I hope that it has helped you, and if it has, then please like and subscribe. It motivates me, and it gets me to make more videos, because I know that I can help other people with doing something like this, which is not really that hard. If you just do by the numbers and you follow certain steps, you're going to get fantastic results. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for other videos.